Hello, this is the Sideshow. I'm Theodore Parker, and today is Wednesday, February 21st, 2024. In this area, Kentucky, Lexington in particular, the temperature today will go up to around 58 degrees. Presently, in this area is sitting at 33 and feels like 26. Mainly clear. Lows overnight in the mid-30s. Rain possible Thursday morning. Snow and rain to sweep throughout the northeast. Today, sunrise will be 7:20 a.m. Sunset at 6:22 p.m. The wind around 5 miles per hour. And the AQI is good at 38. So, as I like to say, if you're watching this Sideshow on Facebook and Instagram, don't forget to like, comment, and share. Talk about it on WhatsApp. The Sideshow on YouTube. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. And the Sideshow coffee cup. Good for all beverages, hot and cold. Black 11-ounce ceramic, dishwasher safe, with the Sideshow logo on it. Buy from me for $17 plus shipping and handling. Pay me through Cash App. $ TR Parker 1. Coming off the All-Star Weekend, NBA. One of the headlines reads, LeBron James passes torch. Next face of the NBA revealed. As follows. LeBron James, in his 20th All-Star appearance, reflects on his career and advises that the next face of the NBA should let it happen organically. As the league anticipates his eventual departure from the spotlight, there's no clear successor, with multiple young stars emerging as potential candidates to carry the mantle. Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, emphasizes the importance of competition in determining the next face of the league and highlights the abundance of international talent contributing to the sport's global appeal. By the numbers, LeBron James scored 8 points in 14 first-half minutes during his 20th All-Star appearance. The NBA has seen a trend of international players winning the MVP award, with the past 5 MVPs coming from overseas. On that note, I don't think previously there has been a score as high in the NBA All-Star game. 200 points on one side, over 100 points on the other, for a total of over 300 points in a single NBA All-Star game. State of play. There's no clear consensus on who will succeed LeBron James as the face of the NBA. International players are playing an increasingly significant role in the NBA and are contributing to the global appeal of the sport. Bottom line, the NBA is poised for a changing of the guard as a new generation of talent emerges, emphasizing the importance of competition on organic growth in determining the next face of the league. As we say, 20 years. How fast time flies. Black History Month, February 2024. I wanted to take a moment to acknowledge the death of Alexei Navalny. And that's in this context. Excuse me. Black history has its share of protest against oppression and unfair practices. From the civil rights movement of the 60s to present-day protests against the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, amongst others. People around the world have joined in solidarity with Black people in this country. So to me, it's only fitting to acknowledge Alexei Navalny, not only for what he stood for, but also what he protested against. According to Wikipedia, Navalny was born 4 June, 1976, and died 16 February 2024. Navalny was a Russian opposition leader, lawyer, and anti-corruption activist and political prisoner. He organized anti-government demonstrations and ran for office to advocate reforms against corruption in Russia and against President Vladimir Putin and his government. Navalny was a Russian Opposition Coordination Council member, leader of the Russia of the Future Party, and founder of the Anti-Corruption Foundation. He was recognized by Amnesty International as a prisoner of conscience and was awarded the Sakharov Prize for his work on human rights. Leaders around the world have responded to his death. I think one of the articles, although subsequent reports have said that he collapsed and had a seizure, etc., but some of the initial reports, at least one that I read, said that he had bruises on his body and they were not willing to surrender it for examination. White House promises major sanctions on Russia in response to Alexei Navalny's death 20 hours ago. The White House said Tuesday it is preparing additional major sanctions on Russia in response to opposition leader Alexei Navalny's death last week in an Arctic penal colony. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the sanctions on the eve of the 2-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine will be a substantial package covering a range of different elements of the Russian defense industrial base and sources of revenue for the Russian economy that powers Russia's war machine, that powers Russia's aggression, and that powers Russia's repression. National Security Council spokesman John Kirby said the U.S. had not determined how Navalny had died, but insisted that the ultimate responsibility lay with Putin. Regardless of the scientific answer, Putin is responsible for it, he told reporters. Russian authorities have said the cause of Navalny's death is still unknown and have refused to release his body for the next 2 weeks as the preliminary inquest continues, members of his team said. The Treasury Department declined to comment on the details of the upcoming sanctions. Brian Nelson, the department's Undersecretary for Terrorism and Financial Intelligence, is in Europe this week to continue working on Russia sanctions ahead of the invasion's 2-year anniversary. The global coalition imposing unprecedented sanctions on Russia's war machine has thrown sand in the gears of the Kremlin's efforts to equip and supply its military. President Biden recently expanded Treasury's authority to target those funding Russia's war production efforts, even if they're located in third countries. And Treasury is aggressively pursuing those who attempt to evade our sanctions, the Treasury Department said last week. Multilateral sanctions and export controls have forced hard trade-offs for Putin and damaged his ability to project power now and in the future. So far, the U.S. and its allies have sanctioned thousands of Russian people and firms, frozen Russian central bank funds, banned certain Russian goods, restricted Russian banks' access to SWIFT, the dominant system for global financial transactions, and imposed a $60 per barrel price cap on Russian oil and diesel, among other measures. Policy experts have advanced an array of proposals meant to further starve Russia of the money it needs to continue its invasion, from seizing the nation's central bank funds, housed largely in Europe, to lowering the Group of Seven price cap in Russian oil. A February working paper from the International Working Group on Russian Sanctions at Stanford University calls for heavier sanctions in Russia's energy market, from lowering the current $60 price cap on Russian-produced oil to $30, as well as completing the EU and G7 ban on Russian hydrocarbons. Asked about more sanctions on Russia during a Council on Foreign Relations media briefing Tuesday, Stephen Sestanovich, a senior fellow for Russian and Eurasian studies at the organization, said the choices are rather limited, but it's not zero. Excuse me. They could try to go lower and put the squeeze on and force the Russians to sell more oil at a discount, he said, adding he anticipates the U.S. to impose more personal sanctions on Russian officials. Charles Kupchan, also a CFR senior fellow and professor of international affairs at Georgetown University, said, sanctions are always in the quiver, but they're not going to matter that much because, let's be honest, the sanctions have not had a huge impact on the Russian economy. What will make a big difference is military and economic assistance to Ukraine, full stop, Kupchan said. So my condolences go out to his wife and his family. I think he had 2 children, and she has said that she would continue his work as she awaits the results and the release of his body for burial. This next report is a case of say it isn't so. Widow and aides indicted in assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. Back when this occurred, the president's widow at the time, I think, came into the United States via Miami, or at least Florida, and took up residence here for a while. And Haiti itself just took a downward turn with gangs and other groups taking over the country. So as it stands now, a judge in Haiti responsible for investigating the July 2021 assassination of President Jovenel Moïse has indicted his widow, Martine Moïse, ex-Prime Minister Claude Joseph, and the former chief of Haiti's National Police, Leon Charles, among others, according to a report obtained Monday. The indictments are expected to further destabilize Haiti as it struggles with the surge in gang violence and recovers from a spat of violent protests demanding the resignation of current Prime Minister Ariel Henry. Dozens of suspects were indicted in the 122-page report issued by Walter Wesser Voltaire, who is the 5th judge to lead the investigation after previous ones stepped down for various reasons, including fear of being killed. And that report is pretty detailed. It's from PBS NewsHour. Some of it's pretty graphic. If you might want to look at that yourself, that's where you would find it, PBS NewsHour. Three West African nations form a federation. Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso have begun talks of creating their own federation. This comes weeks after leaving the Economic Community of West African States. Their intention seems to be to unite West Africa, to share a single currency to strengthen their economics, and to fight against Western meddling. In focus from Spectrum News. Republican Democrat lawmakers reflect on Black History Month. And this is coming out of Kentucky. During this In Focus Kentucky segment, talked with Republican State Senator Donald Douglas of Nicholasville and Democratic State Representative George Brown Jr. of Lexington. I mentioned George Brown when we were discussing during the elections, those ones that were on the ballot for re-election. And George Brown is or was one of those people mentioned. And also, I can say that I met him personally at different events. One of those was at Kentucky State. So here he is in the news relative to Black History Month about their different paths to serving in state government and also differing legislative priorities for this year's Kentucky General Assembly session. Kentucky is known for its horses. I think it's thoroughbreds, bourbons, and basketball. That being said, Lexington is considered to be the horse capital of the world. So, this article, coming from Fox 56 News, Keeneland Traveling Exhibit highlights lives, careers of African American horsemen and women. Out of Lexington, Kentucky. Horse racing has a rich tradition in Kentucky, and much of the industry's success is thanks to the contributions of Black Americans. Those contributions haven't always received a lot of recognition. A traveling exhibit at Keeneland aims to change that by highlighting the lives and careers of African American horsemen and women. Keeneland Library Director Rhoda Ferrero said, "It's a long period of history and a very difficult, a lot of difficult themes, a lot of stories of folks overcoming seemingly insurmountable obstacles as they try to carve their path in this industry. From racetrack superstars to behind-the-scene caretakers, the Heart of the Turf Racing's Black Pioneers highlights stories from African Americans who made their way in the racing industry through slavery to the present." Horse owner and bloodstock agent Greg Harbutt said, "As an African American, I grew up learning that history of a lot of these individuals that are featured, but in February sheds a little more light on these profound individuals and is able to bring some more awareness that's already there about the exhibit." 80 horsemen and women are featured from the mid-1800s to the present time. Harbut says the exhibit is extra important to him. The connection is very special as my great-grandfather, as well as myself, are featured. One of the cool features in the exhibit is very special to not go in and see not only them, but other great horsemen and horsewomen that are primarily featured, learn a lot about the rich, unique history that's on display there, and see how these pivotal pioneers paved the way. The exhibit showcases never before viewed photographs, artwork, artifacts, and video interviews. I think that some of the most gratifying moments when we would host programs or people would just freely walk in and maybe take the exhibit in on their own independently with an audio guide or without. We've had, even more times than I could count in a week. That's my great uncle. That's my preacher's brother, Ferrero said. Harbut says one special achievement for him was having a horse in the Derby 4 years ago, but it wasn't the first in the family. One of the things that you're often asked is, have you had a horse or do you own a horse that's participated in the Kentucky Derby? I can now say yes to that question. But it was more special as well as my grandfather was the owner of a horse that ran in the 1961 Kentucky Derby. So to have that unique lineage to African Americans in the business as owners is very special, not only in history, but to me and my family as well, Harbut said. The exhibit will continue to travel throughout central Kentucky and then to neighboring states. It has already been seen by more than 20,000 people. And I wanted to, since we are in the midst of a certain amount of conflict and all the other acknowledgments and celebrations that are going on for Black history, acknowledge the Black veterans that have served and fought bravely throughout our nation's history. We honor the service of these Black Americans during Black History Month. And what is it without a good meal and good association? University of Kentucky celebrates Black History Month with Southern style cooking. A few other items in the headlines. The CEO of a $3.5 billion security company is paying for workers to socialize, but only if they go out 3-on-3. Excuse me. First Black chemist in bourbon history inspires younger generations. Elmer Lucille Allen was the first Black woman to work at the Brown-Forman Distillery, and now the bourbon community is working to preserve her legacy. Elmer Lucille Allen is best known for being the first Black chemist to work at the Brown-Forman Company in 1966. She was a senior analyst chemist who broke glass ceilings in the bourbon industry. Now, Allen is 92 years old, and the bourbon community is working to preserve her living legacy. Dr. Janice Fernheimer is a professor at the University of Kentucky's researching Kentucky's African American history and women in bourbon. Most women who were entering the workforce were entering in, secretarial roles or as teachers, Fernheimer said. There were very few opportunities for women to use the kind of professional degrees that they had earned. And here she was in 1966 doing just that. While Allen is still living in Louisville, she wasn't able to speak with Scripps News Lexington about her life. Over the years, Fernheimer has interviewed her several times as part of the Women in Bourbon Oral History Project. Mrs. Allen is an icon, she said. I don't know how else to describe her. She is one of the most charismatic, inspiring, wonderful, caring, giving, contributing human beings I've ever met. Allen grew up in Louisville during the Jim Crow era. She attended school at the Louisville Municipal College and Nazareth College, now Spalding University. Fernheimer explains that Allen is also known for artistic abilities from a young age. She says her interest in STEM naturally followed. When we think about chemistry and the arts and sort of the broader arts, this was a part of her curious spirit from when she was a young girl. Fernheimer said, initially she thought she might go into library science. She got really excited about math and science and found herself in the medical labs. After she graduated, even though she had this amazing degree, it wasn't so easy to get a job in her field. Allen was honored by the Kentucky Black Bourbon Guild at his first Untold Story, Chapter 1. The Guild's founder and president, Robert Betty, explains that the organization works to honor Black stories within the bourbon industry. When we think about Mrs. Allen, we basically thinking about how she trailblazed during a time period where not only were there stories about not a lot of women being in the industry, but obviously there weren't a lot of African Americans in the industry. Betty explains that Allen's career continues to inspire younger generations in bourbon and how her legacy will continue to uplift young Blacks in the industry. My organization is working on securing the intellectual property in order to continue to produce a commemorative bottle in the namesake of Mrs. Allen, he added. Also, we're developing a scholarship fund for Mrs. Allen as well, and the receipts will go to that scholarship. Fernheimer explains that throughout her career, Allen has been dedicated to helping others find their own way. She hopes to continue to inspire future generations by continuing to share Allen's story. I first came to know about her legacy in 2020, and I'm someone who's been researching about women in bourbon for that point about 10 years. And so to think that I had just heard about her, not that I'm so special, but I'd actually been doing some research on it and I hadn't really heard about her legacy, Fernheimer said. When I did learn about it, it sort of became my mission to make sure everyone else knew about it too, because she is such a tremendous and iconic figure. And the added part is just like with the dedication of University of Kentucky's Fieldhouse, the Black man that this has been dedicated to and whose name is on the facility is alive to see it, and Mrs. Allen is alive to see the progress made to recognize her in the bourbon industry. That's it. Hashtag.